They say that good love is hard to find. That's more metaphorically speaking for us humans. But for an invasive pest living on the West Coast, making love hard to find is just what the wine growers need.
In a nutshell, what we're trying to do is just slow down the reproductive process with a technique called mating disruption. It's a new age, next generation approach to biological control.
Love could hurt, but who knew it could be so effective against pests? Okay, let's back up a minute. The insects we're talking about here are vine mealybugs, these tiny little critters that live, feed, and breed in California vineyards. Surprisingly, the mealybugs themselves aren't really harmful to the grapevines, but they spread grape leaf roll viruses, which cause a disease so bad it could ruin an entire vineyard.
This disease is probably the most devastating disease to grapes worldwide. What happens is over time, these plants will get these viruses and then they never can get rid of them. There's no cure for these viruses. So once they get them, they're in deep, deep trouble. As soon as these grapevines get these viruses, the production of the fruit goes down and the quality of the fruit goes down. Almost within a couple of years of becoming infected, these vines are no longer productive. The current guidance is that if you have infection rates of 25%, 1 in 4 plants, then the best thing you could do is rip out the entire vineyard and torch the ground and start over. So it's very, very serious.
That's Jacob Corcoran, a research molecular biologist. He works at ARS's Biological Control of Insects unit here in Columbia, Missouri, which to me is a strange place to study vine mealybugs. Corcoran actually did his postdoc work in Corvallis, Oregon, which is a huge wine-producing region in the Pacific Northwest. So why is he doing wine grape research in Missouri?
In case you're not aware, Missouri actually grows a lot of grapes. Nothing compared to California, of course, but it is a major industry here. A fun anecdote is that pre-Prohibition, Missouri was actually the leading wine and grape producer in the nation. Once Prohibition was lifted, everything shifted to the West Coast for the most part. So in Missouri, we still grow grapes, but it's a fraction of what's produced.
When Corcoran arrived at the research unit in Columbia, one of his first jobs was to study the insect vectors that transmit these leaf roll-causing viruses. Now, this insect looks like a mosquito in that it has a piercing, sucking straw for a mouth. The females don't fly. Rather, they nestle in the bark of the grapevine and they suck up nutrients from the plant. In doing so, they also spread the viruses that cause leaf roll disease. The females then move from vine to vine, sucking up the nutrients and then transmitting the viruses to other grapevines.
They're so small, they live under the bark of the grapevine almost their entire life cycle, which makes it impossible to see them, quite honestly. So if a typical grower went out into his vineyard and he started to look around and he said, wow, look at these beautiful vines. They look great. You don't see any sign of them living there. But once you start to peel back the bark a little bit, you'll notice these little pockets of these little tiny bugs. So what that translates to is a situation where these little insects are possibly spreading viruses into your grapevines that are going to ultimately cause you to replant, rip out your entire vineyard, and you don't even know they're there.
Growers have used a variety of methods to try and control the spread of vine mealybugs. Pesticide spraying has limited effectiveness because the females live under the bark and they have this waxy protective coating. Because vine mealybugs are an invasive species from the Middle East, they have no real predators here. So one of the most effective methods for controlling these bugs is mating disruption, which brings us back to the story of love and heartbreak. Just like love, it involves complex chemistry. I'll let Corcoran explain.
Back in the day, we knew that there were these chemicals that were present in the environment. They come from plants, they come from insects, and they all produce these unique bouquets of odorant molecules. And they float around in the air, and we call it an odorant because an insect will smell it. So they have very specific receptors for these airborne chemicals that when they bind to these receptors, they tell the insect information, like how an insect might identify a grapevine versus a blueberry plant. Insects communicate with each other, especially between species, by using a unique chemical compound. Vine mealybug produce a compound that is incredibly unique. It's not found anywhere else in nature. And the females of this species produce this compound, and they emit it during reproductive cycles, and the males detect it from miles away, and they will come and find the females, and they mate, and then the males end up dying, and the females go on and they produce another generation.
Interesting to note that while females have a mouth, so to speak, and cannot fly, the males actually do not have mouths, but they have wings. I guess that's why they're the perfect match. Anyways, Corcoran noted that vine mealybugs typically have around 10 mating periods per grape growing season. That's tens of thousands of newborns every year. And even though the males die within a few days after birth, the females continue to reproduce and spread the deadly virus. Fortunately, chemists were able to reproduce the same unique pheromone that the females emitted to attract the males during mating season. This was a huge moment for the wine industry because growers could spray this synthetic pheromone in their vineyard, and during mating season, the males would get confused and not know which source of pheromone to pursue for mating. If they waited too long to mate, well, it's opportunity lost for love.
We've been doing this for quite some time. It's not perfect. Some of the main issues with mating disruption in general, and specifically in the context of the vine mealybug, is that the pheromone itself, you got to put a lot of synthetic pheromone out into the vineyard to have an effect, both in quantity, but also throughout the season. And so that obviously increases the cost. And these are synthetic chemicals that are expensive in general. So not every grower can do this, and not every grower can do it all the time.
Corcoran is working on 2 innovative solutions to further disrupt the mating of vine mealybugs. He started by using what he calls next-generation sequencing technology to study the insect's genetics, which eventually allowed him to identify the receptor for its own sex pheromone.
This was huge for us. Now we have the sex pheromone receptor, and we're trying to do 2 things. We're trying to build on this concept of mating disruption, trying to develop a super mating disruptor. Again, the same principle of mating disruption, but here we've got a sex pheromone molecule that we've produced to live longer in the field, to be more efficacious, to be more attractive to males, something that's cheaper to make.
Building on this breakthrough, he's also using the sex pheromone receptor to develop sensors that could be applied in the fields, either remotely or on a device like a tractor. The sensors could detect when and where the females give off the pheromone to attract the males. So, instead of growers spraying their entire vineyard regularly with insecticides or mating disruption products, they could time the release to mating periods and restrict the release to only areas where the females are present. He calls it precision agriculture.
That's really what we're talking about, having an impact on the ecosystem is like, oh, it's Monday, time to spray the whole vineyard. It would be awesome to be able to say, yeah, like on the southwest perimeter fence, we've detected a mealybug. Target, send the drone over right now and drop some, whatever, and spare the rest of the vineyard. That's where we're going. Or you could have it at the border between California and Oregon, and they would know, there's on this truckload of grapes, there's a mealybug present. Pull that truck over, let's spray it, let's do whatever we got to do. Because again, it's about that prevention. So having this receptor that is highly sensitive, highly specific for the sex pheromone allows us to move forward through this technological hurdle of putting it into a format where we can deploy it in the field. It sounds like science fiction, but the truth is it's real.
Real indeed. As real as my love for wine. Speaking of which, join us for our next episode, where we dive deeper into the effects our changing weather is having on vineyards, and we'll discover an unexpected consequence of this new climate reality.